The tense atmosphere backstage at Lakewood Church hummed with anticipation as a tall security guard's hand hesitated just inches from Senator John Neely Kennedy's shoulder. It was a moment teetering on the brink of something significant, a spark ready to ignite a revelation that could shake the core of modern Christianity and leave 50,000 individuals questioning the very essence of their beliefs. John Neely Kennedy, the esteemed senator from Louisiana, was surrounded by Joel Osteen's private security team, his presence radiating a composed authority shaped by years in public service. His sharp yet steady eyes exuded the quiet strength of a man who had navigated countless challenges in the Senate with firm principles. The head of security spoke in a low, urgent tone. "Sir Kennedy, Pastor Osteen has specifically requested that you leave the premises immediately." However, what unfolded next went beyond simple defiance or bravado. It revealed the senator's deep commitment to justice, a determination that Joel Osteen, in his years of preaching prosperity, might have underestimated. The security team expected compliance, assuming Kennedy would quietly leave, like others had when confronted by Lakewood's influence. They didn't anticipate that John Kennedy had spent months meticulously preparing for this exact moment, not merely as a politician delivering a speech, but as a man driven by a moral imperative to challenge what he perceived as a misuse of faith. What Osteen and his team couldn't have foreseen was that Kennedy had discovered a truth so compelling it would expose the stark contrast between genuine service and practices thriving on empty promises. A truth hidden beneath polished sermons and appeals for monetary blessings. A truth challenging whether a public servant like Kennedy was merely offering platitudes or standing as a protector of the vulnerable. Facing the security guard, Kennedy's voice resonated with the conviction that earned respect in congressional hearings. "Tell Joel," he said with a slight smile, a blend of compassion and determination, "I have a message for his followers, and nothing will stop me from delivering it." What happened next was captured on countless phones, shared millions of times, prompting the Christian world to face a piercing question: what if the promises of prosperity and blessings were crafted to benefit a few, while leaving many in despair? Ready to uncover the truth, Joel Osteen attempted to silence the difference between authentic faith and profitable faith. Hit that like button, and drop a fire emoji if you dare to challenge what you believe about modern Christianity, and discern between leaders who serve and those who exploit. It all began with a phone call one quiet morning, a call that seemed routine, yet carried the hint of something significant. Joel Osteen's personal assistant, her voice warm and inviting, as Lakewood Church is known for, reached out to Senator John Kennedy with an enticing offer. "Mr. Kennedy," she said, her tone nearly radiant with enthusiasm, "Pastor Joel would be honored if you shared your insights at our upcoming service. Imagine the impact of a respected senator inspiring 50,000 people with stories of purpose and integrity leading to abundant blessings." Yet, John Kennedy couldn't be easily swayed by flattery or grand gestures. His decades of public service had honed a discernment for recognizing invitations with hidden motives. As he listened to the assistant's carefully crafted words, a quiet unease stirred within him. The emphasis on abundant blessings and financial favor struck a discordant note. It felt less like an opportunity to share wisdom and more like a staged event to reinforce Lakewood's prosperity narrative. Kennedy's instinct for truth, sharpened by years in complex political landscapes, told him this was about more than a guest appearance. He agreed to speak, but not without a plan to delve deeper, uncovering what lay beneath this seemingly generous offer. The following week saw Kennedy immerse himself in an inquiry that would shake even the staunchest critics of prosperity theology. He delved into Joel Osteen's teachings, scrutinizing sermons promising wealth as divine favor and examining the ministry's public financial footprint. But most crucially, he sought stories of those who followed Lakewood's promises to their detriment. His findings revealed a troubling pattern of heartbreak. Families giving their last dollars to the church, believing their sacrifices would yield miraculous returns, only to face eviction and financial ruin. Elderly congregants who donated their fixed incomes, convinced of blessings multiplying with their generosity, now struggled with basic necessities like food and medicine. But one story stopped him in his tracks, piercing him with its raw tragedy. Margaret Chen, an 82-year-old grandmother from Louisiana, a state Kennedy was sworn to serve with every fiber of his being. For months on end, Margaret sent her entire Social Security check to Lakewood, clinging to Osteen's assurances that her gifts would unlock God's financial floodgates. She died alone in a cold apartment, her utilities cut off because she prioritized the church's appeals over her own survival. Her granddaughter's handwritten letter haunted Kennedy. I thought God would take care of me if I took care of his preacher." The weight of these words enveloped him like a heavy fog, each syllable underscoring the human cost of unchecked promises. Reading Margaret's story, Kennedy felt a profound shift within him. This wasn't merely a theological disagreement or motivational rhetoric gone astray, but a system seemingly preying on the most vulnerable under the guise of spiritual authority. As a senator committed to defending the people of Louisiana, Kennedy saw Margaret's story as more than a tragedy. It was a call to action, a summons to stand up for those misled. If he truly embodied the values of fairness, accountability, and protection for the powerless, he knew silence wasn't an option. The Jesus he read about in Scripture, one who condemned exploitation of the poor and called out hypocrisy, wouldn't have walked away from such a moment. Neither could John Kennedy. Margaret's story wasn't just one woman's loss, it signified countless others who were made to believe their poverty indicated spiritual failure, their struggles a lack of divine favor. This was a betrayal of trust, and Kennedy, with his deep sense of justice, felt compelled to act. The night before his appearance at Lakewood, Kennedy sat alone in his hotel room, not rehearsing a speech, but deeply reflecting on his responsibility. This wasn't about political posturing or public arena points. It was about standing up for individuals like Margaret Chen, whose faith had been weaponized against them. He pondered over those taught to equate their worth with wealth, their devotion with donations. In the quiet of that moment, Kennedy questioned his purpose. What would true integrity look like in a place prioritizing profit over people? He recalled the stories of those who gave everything only to be left with nothing but broken promises, and thought of the scriptures emphasizing justice, caring for the widows and orphans, and holding power accountable. Rising from his reflection, Kennedy felt a clarity transcending politics or public image. He wouldn't just deliver prepared remarks the next day. He would be a voice for those silenced, a defender of truth where it might not be welcome. His preparation wasn't about crafting a polished presentation, but about steeling himself for a moment requiring courage, conviction, and unwavering commitment to rightness. The event's morning arrived, and Kennedy stepped into Lakewood Church with quiet determination. Backstage, the atmosphere was charged. The security team's presence subtly indicated his appearance was already causing ripples. As he waited, the head of security, flanked by two others, approached with faces set in professional resolve. "Mr. Kennedy," the lead guard stated, his voice betraying discomfort, "there's been a change in plans. Pastor Joel asks we escort you out." Yet Kennedy, unfazed, reached into his jacket and pulled out a small note. The guards tensed, relaxing upon seeing it was merely handwritten. "Before I go," Kennedy began, his voice carrying years of advocacy for the voiceless, "I have a message from Margaret Chen's granddaughter." He unfolded the note, reading it with a steady tone imbued with quiet power. "My grandmother died believing God had forsaken her because Pastor Joel suggested hardship stemmed from lack of faith. She gave her utility money to his ministry and suffered in the cold. Please tell the truth." The words hung heavily, bearing the weight of a lost life and betrayed trust. The guards, used to handling disturbances, found themselves momentarily disarmed, facing a man whose calm resolve held a moral authority they couldn't counter. Kennedy deliberately folded the note, addressing each guard in turn. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice firm yet compassionate, "you can escort me out and I'll go peacefully. But Margaret Chen suffered because your boss teaches that struggles are personal failings. If you silence her story, you're part of the system that harmed her." The lead guard's radio buzzed with Joel Osteen's urgent, strained voice. "Get him out, before the service begins." Yet, as the guard approached Kennedy, something extraordinary unfolded. Kennedy smiled. Not with boldness or fury, but with the unwavering kindness he exhibited in the Senate. "Tell Joel," he declared, his voice now carrying a weight that seemed to resonate beyond the room, "that Margaret Chen's story deserves its moment. Nothing can stop it." The guards found themselves pausing, their determination faltering in the presence of a man motivated not by self-interest, but by the quest for truth. What happened afterward would be documented on countless devices, shared far and wide, demonstrating that a senator celebrated for his honesty could transform an intense situation into a beacon for truth. Stay tuned, because when John Kennedy stepped beyond that backstage barrier, he set in motion a confrontation that would resonate far beyond the walls of Lakewood, challenging the core of what faith and leadership signify in a world ensnared by prosperity's allure. Backstage at Lakewood Church was a maze of polished hallways and subdued voices. For Senator John Kennedy, it seemed like the tranquil scene before the storm he had anticipated for weeks. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation for what was about to take place, a pivotal moment that might redefine the delicate balance of faith and honesty for multitudes. Kennedy stood briefly in solitude, his focus razor-sharp, his heart steadied by a determination forged not just in the Senate, but in those quiet moments of contemplation that led him here. His purpose wasn't for accolade or acknowledgement. It was to give voice to individuals like Margaret Chen, whose tales had been overshadowed by the allure of prosperity promises. The attempt to remove him by security had not faltered due to force. It was the quiet strength of truth Kennedy held that made even seasoned guards pause. As he adjusted his jacket, he felt the significance of holding the handwritten note from Margaret Chen's granddaughter close to him, a reminder of the commitment he had chosen to embrace. This wasn't politics or personal advantage. It was about defending the defenseless, those from Louisiana and beyond misled by teachings equating faith with wealth. His preparation had been exhaustive, not only in gathering evidence, but in anchoring himself in the values steering his career: fairness, accountability, and a relentless vow to champion those who couldn't defend themselves. What awaited Kennedy was more than just Joel Osteen's security. It was the entire framework of a ministry thriving on meticulously crafted promises. Stay tuned, because when a principled individual steps into an environment built on profit, the clash is cataclysmic. What John Kennedy did in those critical seconds would amplify a confrontation far beyond Lakewood's confines. The groundwork for this moment had commenced weeks earlier, before Kennedy stepped onto Houston's soil after Joel Osteen's assistant extended an impeccably polished invitation to share perspectives at Lakewood. Kennedy's instincts had triggered an acute alertness. He didn't accept anything at face value, not when the stakes involved the trust of multitudes. His career had revolved around relentless inquiry and scrutiny, and he approached the invitation with similar diligence. Late into many nights across various offices and hotel rooms, Kennedy immersed himself in transcripts of Austin's speeches, Lakewood's financial disclosures, and, paramountly, the narratives of followers of the church's doctrines. What he uncovered was more than just optimistic rhetoric. It was a breadcrumb trail of ruined lives. Families had drained savings and hope, envisioning divine enrichment, only to face foreclosure. Single mothers went without meals, donating to Lakewood for a miracle that never surfaced. Elderly followers like Margaret Chen donated their last pennies, left impoverished while the ministry flourished. Each tale weaved into a larger tapestry depicting a system profiteering from believers' despair. Kennedy's investigation was both academic and deeply personal. Margaret Chen's story, however, became the linchpin of his resolve. The tragedy of this 82-year-old Louisiana grandmother, who perished in winter after sending her Social Security to Lakewood, deeply resonated with him. Her granddaughter's letter, with its poignant message, "I assumed God would care for me since I supported his preacher," wasn't just a narrative. It was a battle cry. Kennedy saw it mirrored in countless others from his state and beyond, who felt their ordeal was a spiritual failing. As he delved deeper, he discovered more cases: veterans, seniors, struggling parents, hoodwinked into thinking faith demanded financial surrender, only to find ruin when the anticipated blessings failed to appear. These weren't faceless figures. They were real individuals from communities Kennedy had pledged to serve. His preparation involved not only accumulating evidence, but realizing the human cost of prosperity theology. He drew from Scripture not as ornamentation but as a moral compass, pondering verses on justice, modesty, and aiding the indigent. Christ's cautions against those who consume widows' resources, stressing that true wealth lies not in fortune but in service, resonated deeply with him. Kennedy was readying himself for a moral outcry, one demanding the same bravery he exhibited challenging Washington's powerful interests. On the eve of his Lakewood venture, he skipped rehearsing speeches or refining talking points. Instead, he sat in serene contemplation in his hotel suite, the weight of Margaret Chen's note on his conscience. He pondered leadership responsibilities, not only politically but in junctures needing moral precision. Reflecting on the principles that shaped his journey, advocating for the marginalized, ensuring accountability in the powerful, risking truth even in discomfort, he saw this as beyond political gain or publicity. It was about echoing the silenced voices overshadowed by a system exploiting faith. Kennedy asked himself a pointed question, cutting to the essence: What signifies leadership with integrity, where profit might overshadow people? The answer was in tales like Margaret's, in scriptures advocating justice, and his unwavering pledge to Louisianians. Rising from reflection, Kennedy knew the next day entailed more than dialogue. It demanded principle-rooted action. Kennedy's visit wasn't merely a speech. He was addressing a narrative wreaking actual damage, equipped with truth and a resolve to make an impact. On the day itself, Kennedy entered Lakewood Church with quiet, unwavering determination. The polished tents backstage, security's presence, a subtle neon sign that his appearance was already disturbing. As he waited, the security chief approached him, flanked by 2 escorts, their faces embodying professional gravity. "Mr. Kennedy," said the lead guard, unable to disguise a sliver of indecision, "there's been a protocol change. Pastor Joel asks we escort you out." Kennedy remained calm, extracting from his jacket a modest sheet of paper, Margaret Chen's granddaughter's note. The guards, briefly alarmed, then relaxed, realizing it was merely handwritten. "Before leaving," Kennedy asserted, his voice laced with the steady authority derived from countless Senate challenges, "I am here with a message from Margaret Chen's granddaughter." Deliberate and impactful, he read the note. "My grandmother died in despair, believing God forsook her because Pastor Joel linked hardship with lost faith. She sacrificed her bills for the ministry's cause, suffering in the cold. Please unveil the truth." The words struck like thunder, leaving a heavy silence from the magnitude of a sacrificed life and broken trust. The guards, skilled for disruptions, were momentarily disoriented when faced with a man whose composed determination wielded a moral strength beyond dismissal. Carefully folding the note, Kennedy met each guard's eyes. "Gentlemen," he stated, his firm voice tinged with understanding, "escort me out and I'll leave quietly. Yet, know that Margaret Chen's story suffered from making struggles akin to personal failings. If silencing her narrative, you're complicit to her harm." Joel Osteen's voice crackled into the radio. "Urgent, get him out now before the service begins." The guards moved nearer, their motions methodical but unsure, confronted by a man whose presence commanded respect. Then, the extraordinary occurred. Kennedy smiled, not with challenge or irritation, but a nurturing calm shaped by years championing the unheard. "Inform Joel," he continued, his invincible voice encompassing the room, "that Margaret Chen's story has a right to be told, and nothing will crush that." The guards hesitated, their convictions swaying before a senator radiating truth's power. They expected resistance or quarrel, but encountered instead a man resolute, not for self, but for the wronged. At that juncture, a shift transpired. The guards, custodians of order, wavered in decisive action. Kennedy's words, echoing with Margaret Chen's raw truth, disrupted their routine. The note in his hand transcended paper. It symbolized innumerable lives impacted by hollow pledges. In his hand, John Kennedy grasped more than mere paper. It was a testament to the numerous lives touched by unfulfilled promises. Kennedy found himself not on a stage seeking applause, but at a pivotal juncture where honesty required action. A hesitation from the security team revealed a crack in Lakewood's tightly managed atmosphere, indicating that truth, when delivered with determination, could unsettle the most established systems. What followed would be documented on countless phones and shared worldwide, proving that a senator renowned for his ethics could turn a tense moment into a powerful demand for responsibility. The confrontation was just beginning. However, Kennedy's resolve behind the scenes had already set the course. A principled man was about to step into the limelight, not to gain personal glory, but to shine a light on the untold stories of those left behind. Stay with me, because when John Kennedy moved beyond the curtains, he would bring Margaret Chen's story into a realm unfamiliar with such honesty, igniting a moment that would resonate beyond Lakewood's walls and challenge the fundamentals of faith and leadership. The grand doors of Lakewood Church's sanctuary swung open with a commanding echo as Senator John Kennedy made his way down the main aisle. Each step was deliberate, slicing through the subdued hum of Joel Osteen's sermon, which was promising abundant life. The 50,000-strong audience turned, their murmurs swelling into a wave of intrigue. As Osteen's cadence faltered, his smooth message of prosperity was interrupted by the unexpected entrance of Kennedy. The senator's composed authority filled the massive space with undeniable intensity. The security guards, who had attempted to stop him backstage, had disappeared, their determination shattered by a man wielding nothing but a handwritten note and an unwavering commitment to truth. Joel Osteen's smile froze, his gaze fixed on Kennedy, who advanced with the conviction of someone prepared through both intellect and emotion. This was no mere guest speaker playing a role. This was a Louisiana senator renowned for his integrity, entering a place built on promises that Kennedy believed left the vulnerable astray. Cameras broadcasting live to millions captured each moment, documenting an event that would become crucial in the conversation around modern faith. This was a moment that would interrogate the core of prosperity theology, urging a confrontation with reality. As Kennedy took the stage, the air grew tense with anticipation, the crowd sensing something significant unfolding. Stay with me, because when a principled man challenges a system rooted in profit, the results are transformative. What Kennedy did next would ignite a movement echoing far past Lakewood's walls. Kennedy moved to the center of the stage, commanding silence without the need for a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and robust, carrying the depth of his Louisiana roots and years of championing justice. "My name is John Kennedy, and I'm here to speak for someone who can no longer do so themselves." The arena, usually alive with cheers, fell silent. Kennedy pulled Margaret Chen's granddaughter's note from his jacket, raising it for the cameras to capture. "This is from Margaret Chen's granddaughter, an 82-year-old woman from Louisiana, my home state," he said, his tone intentional, each word cutting through the polished atmosphere. "Margaret died alone in a cold apartment, her utilities cut off because she spent her last dollars on this ministry, hoping faith would bring financial blessings. She believed her sacrifices would unlock divine favor, but she suffered as the church thrived." The silence was profound, a stark contrast to Lakewood's usual fervor. This congregation, accustomed to uplifting messages, now faced a story that shattered the polished narrative. Kennedy's voice, steadfast yet compassionate, made Margaret's loss undeniable, compelling the audience to face the real cost of the teachings they embraced. Directing his gaze at Joel Osteen, who stood motionless behind his podium, Kennedy's eyes were resolute. "Pastor Joel," he said, his voice a mixture of empathy and unyielding challenge. "Margaret Chen entrusted her faith to you, believing poverty signified a spiritual shortcoming. She gave her all, and it cost her life. How many others have suffered under the notion that their struggles reflect a lack of faith?" The question lingered, directly challenging Osteen and prosperity gospel itself. The crowd shifted. Some wiped away tears, others exchanged urgent whispers, and a few stood as though grappling with the weight of the moment. Kennedy opened a well-worn Bible, its pages heavily marked from study. "Let me read something," he said, his voice clear and authoritative. "In Matthew 19, Jesus told a rich young man, 'Sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me.' The man left sad because he was very wealthy." Kennedy paused, allowing the message to resonate. Then Jesus said, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter God's kingdom." Pastor Joel, when was the last time you preached on that passage? The question struck with the force of a thunderbolt. Joel Osteen stood, visibly shaken, gripping the podium, his usual confidence replaced by discomfort. "John, you're taking that out of context," he faltered, his voice barely holding. Kennedy, with the articulate precision of a seasoned debater, responded calmly, yet confidently. "Let's provide context then," he said. "Jesus didn't promise affluence or ease. He stated, 'In this world, you will face trouble.' He called followers to bear their crosses, give to the poor, and accumulate treasures in heaven, not earth. He warned against exploiting the vulnerable for profit." The congregation was no longer silent. The space buzzed with emotion. Some wept openly, their faces reflecting the disillusionment of a shattered narrative. Others called out, their voices a mix of confusion and anger. Some headed for the exits, their faith in Lakewood shaken. The cameras captured it all, broadcasting the unrest to millions as a senator known for his integrity stood at Lakewood's stage, mirroring its practices. Then an unexpected moment stunned the room. Members of Lakewood's worship team, poised to begin the next song, set down their instruments and walked off stage. The lead singer, her voice shaky but determined, took the microphone. "We can't sing about a God who promises wealth when Jesus spoke of sacrifice," she said. "We're done." One by one the team left, a silent denunciation of the prosperity message. The congregation erupted, some were shocked, others in tears, some even cheered, recognizing the act's courage. Kennedy stood resolute, a beacon of calm amidst the upheaval. Holding up Margaret Chen's note again, he spoke with emotion. "This woman believed her poverty signified God's abandonment," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But the Jesus of Scripture was born in a stable, lived without a home, and died with nothing. He didn't equate faith with wealth, he measured it by love, compassion, and how we treat the least among us." Margaret Chen's sacrifice illustrated more faith than many who profited from it. Joel Osteen, now visibly flustered, tried to regain control. "John, let's discuss this offstage," he suggested, his voice nearly lost amidst the crowd's unrest. But Kennedy maintained his stance, eyes unwavering. "Pastor Joel," he said, his words filled with a lifetime of advocating for justice. "This isn't about a private conversation. It's about the people here, the audience at home, who have been told their struggles are their fault, their faith inadequate because they're not wealthy. Margaret Chen's story speaks for countless others who placed their trust in you and were left devoid. The truth must be heard now." The crowd's reaction was electric. Some stood and cheered, others knelt in prayer, and many canceled recurring donations to Lakewood via their phones. Cameras zoomed in, capturing a congregation grappling with a truth they hadn't faced before. Kennedy's words weren't an attack. They were a call to reevaluate a faith built on Scripture and the indisputable reality of lives like Margaret's. The senator's intent wasn't to bring down one man, but to elevate a message overshadowed by promises of wealth. The crowd's response, through tears, queries, and spontaneous acts of generosity, signaled an irreversible shift. Some shared money with nearby attendees, moved by Kennedy's call to aid the poor. Others whispered prayers, their expressions mixing sorrow with awakening. The worship team's departure had sparked the flame, but Kennedy's words set off a movement questioning Lakewood's core. Joel Osteen stood behind the podium, sweat glistening on his forehead, his empire trembling. The teleprompter scrolled on, yet he couldn't read it, eyes locked on Kennedy. The cameras caught his faltering poise as he implored, "Security, restore order, please." But the plea was lost in the crowd's response. A sea of individuals confronted with a choice: adhere to comforting promises or embrace the challenging truths Kennedy unveiled. Kennedy stepped forward once more. "This isn't about me," he declared, his voice cutting through the commotion. "This is about Margaret Chen and countless others who gave everything and were left with nothing. This is about real faith. Not wealth, but standing for what's just." The stage was no longer Osteen's. It now belonged to the truth Kennedy spoke of. And the cracks in prosperity theology were widening. Stay with me. Because Kennedy's mission went beyond critiquing a singular church, it was about envisioning a faith grounded in truth, compelling millions to choose between easy assurances and genuine conviction.